Hi everybody, welcome to Readers of the Lost Art. And is this on your channel, Richard?
It is.
Richard Grannon's Philosophy channel. And if you're on either Richard Grannon's Philosophy channel or Darren F. Magee's channel, talking about channels, I will channel my inner Greta Thunberg and say, how dare you? You should all be on Readers of the Lost Art. It's disgraceful.
Paul, how can you do a better Greta Thunberg than my accent?
I've no idea. But we're going to have a whole program in which we hear Darren say wheel instead of whale. and you know you're in trouble if Paul is coaching you on how to do your diphthongs. And one thing I wanted to get out of the way straight away before we dived in was I just don't get the sense with Stuart and Richard in particular. Darren and I are much more mature about these things, but I can just sense we're going to be having puerile giggles about the title of the book. So I thought we'd just address that head on. And Darren, did you ever find out how Richard and I met?
No, is it down by the docks?
Well, not so far. He was working the doors in Liverpool, the security, weren't you, Richard?
Yes.
And I had a camper van, and I started a male escort business. And Richard was one of my first performers, and it was called Moby Dick. So it brings back fond memories of how we met and what this book means to us jointly. So Richard, you did mention it in a previous discussion. You mentioned Moby Dick, so it is your fault that we're doing this. So do you want to explain why? Yeah.
I don't remember the context of me mentioning Moby Dick.
Oh, it was just a throw. No, it was a throwaway comment. I'm not holding you to.
Oh, yes.
I think you mentioned you were reading it, so you obviously had an interest in it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you'll be glad to hear this, Paul. I did not enjoy this book at all. Paul likes it when I did not get any pleasure from this book at all. I found it very, very, very hard to get through.
Great.
Despite it being quite a dark book about single-minded obsession and self-destruction and the narcissistic shared fantasy. I wanted to strangle Ishmael with my bare hands. I did not enjoy being in that guy's head. He was like a hyperactive teenager. He's excessively verbose, bloviating about bits and pieces of whaling that don't even exist. And it just felt like Herman Melville going, look at how clever I am. Look at all the words I know. But I pushed past that to get to the dark heart of the tale. But no pleasure was found here. It was like grinding out high volume deadlifts or something, which I know you approve of. I know that you like it when you grind through a book.
That's honestly, I was about to say what part of my introduction was going to be. Anyone who doesn't think this is one of the best books ever written has probably had a partial lobotomy. But we seem to disagree on this one. But Darren, will you tell Richard why he's completely wrong?
You put me on the spot.
Have you met me before, Darren?
I've met Richard. He's bigger and stronger than me as well. Moby Dick. Well, first of all, I'll say my introduction to Moby Dick would have been when I would have been very young, and based on where I lived at the time, I'm guessing I would have been about maybe 6 or 7 years of age, and that would have been the movie, the Gregory Peck movie. And I remember being terrified. I don't think I sat through the whole thing, but I do have this image of, when Ahab is strapped to the side of the whale and he's still shouting at it and so on. First of all, the whale scared me as a kid. Of course it did. But that scene haunted me for years. It really did. It was just such a scary
scene. Is this, Darren, just to clarify, is this because of its homoerotic overtones?
No, it's because it was a big, scary whale, and there was a guy strapped to the side of it who couldn't get away from it.
Right, so that's how you rationalize it, yeah?
That's how I rationalized it, my younger self. So I found that terrifying. Familiar with the story, as everybody is, but I read it for the first time. I would have been maybe about 18 or 19. I read it again just prior to the lockdown. The different ways you see it it's often quoted and things like that in other stories and other movies, other books and things like that. So it is definitely something that is within our psyche. We all know what it is. I find it very difficult to pin down what you would say the actual book is about, because there's so many different things going on with it. But I like to think of it as it's what happens whenever someone pursues, chases down, and wants to destroy the demons, perceived or otherwise, that are in front of them, as opposed to face the ones that are within them. So for me, that's what it's about. And that's why I think it's a very good story.
Scurvy stew.
Tell me. I read it at school. I think it was GCSE, but we didn't read the whole novel. So I think, Paul, you talked about this in the past about how education degraded over the years. You would have had to read the whole book for GCSE, but we just did some chapters of it. And Paul told me he was doing this podcast about it, and I thought, okay, yeah, I know Moby Dick. And I started looking at the kind of comparative religion connection, and started reading a lot about how Herman Melville was really into different religions, and Gnostic Christianity, Zoroastrianism, heretical, kind of non-canonical gospels and things like that. And it just added like an extra level of depth to it. Previously, you just think this is about somebody pursuing a goal to the nth degree, going crazy, losing their mind, doing it, and dragging everyone down with them. So that would be kind of a political reading. But then the more I looked into analysis of the actual depth that was in this novel, it just absolutely blew me away. And I could see why Paul said that, this is one of my favorite novels. So I was the opposite of Richard. I heard it was going to be a little bit of a tough read. I heard it was going to be, quite difficult language, but I just got fully absorbed into it. I mean, a lot of it wouldn't have made sense had I not read previous analysis before, which kind of pointed me. So, you think of like going into a movie with all the spoilers. It's gonna basically undermine your enjoyment of the movie. I actually found going into this book with the spoilers and with a bit of a kind of a navigation guide, to put nautical terms, it made it all the more better because I knew what I was looking for. And it was 600 pages, just absolutely flew by. I blasted through it, and I was just like, I could start this again, and I'm probably going to find even more than I missed the first time.
So, Richard, do you feel like apologizing now?
No, let me tell you why. So it was written in 1851, and it was a full 70 years that people got past all that self-indulgent, wankish bloviating and verbosity. 70 fucking years before somebody actually got to the meat of the book and said, you know what, this is very, very clever. Yeah. It's not just self-indulgent waffle. 70 years. So I think I fall into that camp where I got put off, and I just, when you read a book, you're inside and it's written from a first person. You must be as intimate with Ishmael as Queequeg is when he holds him like his wife in bed, breathing his fetid air. And I just
you can smell it as you're reading it. Yeah,
it's a very smelly book, and I think that. So I didn't say it's a bad book, because I can't say it's bad literature. I think it's McCarthy-esque. Cormac McCarthy's my favorite novelist, American novelist, and it's in that lineage, and you can see that McCarthy is influenced by it. It's not that it's a bad book. I couldn't say that, and it's not that it's badly written. I just didn't like him. I didn't like Ishmael. He was too self-preening. And I've even looked to see if there's criticisms that say maybe there's supposed to be something slightly repellent about him, but like in a Kafkaesque way. You're not supposed to love the character. You're supposed to just experience it with him. I couldn't find that, and most people don't say that they disliked him as much as I did. So maybe there's something in me I should work through with Darren in therapy as to why.
No, I was going to say, Darren, you've got your work cut out. I'd say two things. One is I'm sorry that it interrupted, because you were reading the Barbara Cartland trilogy before we made you read this, weren't you? So I'm sorry we interrupted it. But secondly, when he says at the very beginning, call me Ishmael, it's interesting that it doesn't mean that he is Ishmael. He actually says, "Call me Ishmael," and in the Bible, Ishmael, it's a complicated story, because I'm going to do a whole video on the biblical roots of all this, because it's just so complicated. But chip in if I get any of this wrong, Stu.
Yeah.
Ishmael was the son of Hagar, who was the bondswoman of Abraham. And Hagar was basically pimped out to Abraham by his wife Sarah because she couldn't conceive because she was ancient. So, and then it's described in the Bible as he was, he's then kicked out by Abraham and Sarah. So they're wandering, and they're Hagar goes to about 100 yards away because they're so weak and they're dying in the desert, and an angel of the Lord helps them. But one of the descriptions is that he will have every man's hand against him, and he will be against everyone else. So basically, he's the bastard's child. So he's an outcast, and he's going to be rebarbative with everyone, and everyone's not going to like him. So in that sense, Melville achieved what he wanted to with your response, didn't he?
It certainly sounds like it. And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't this one of Melville's first novels?
Yeah.
It's not like he'd written. So let me just counteract what I said before. I'm impressed by the audacity, because he didn't work his way into a big, grandiose, mythic book. He just dove straight in, and it doesn't read like somebody who's writing for the first time. It's very confidently written. I'll give him that as well. And maybe there is meant to be something, as you say, given the biblical placement of his name, maybe there is meant to be something that's slightly contrarian in his demeanor with the reader.
One more thing, and then Darren or Stuart. I was just having a comment on my channel on a completely different topic, and we started discussing. Someone mentioned Moby Dick in a different context, but their description was they found Ishmael really reassuringly optimistic and lovable.
I hate.
So optimism. I'm not saying you're wrong at all, but isn't it interesting that there can be such a diametrically opposed reception of him?
Yeah, I felt. I mean, I think Darren will be able to help out with this analysis. I mean, you'll probably be able to put the terms to my basic observations. But I found Ishmael was someone who's very like well integrated personality. He comes across as like an observer. He sees the world around him, but he's quite content with things. He observes things, but he doesn't get kind of too engaged or get bogged down by things. You can compare him to Ahab, who has this very kind of burning, strong desire, like a mission. He's very kind of discontented with the world. He wants to kind of, I think he says, punch through the plaster. He's not happy with what he sees. He's convinced there's something behind, something malicious, something evil, and this is where the mission of the whale comes in. Whereas Ishmael, I think that he has a real closeness to Queequeg, because Queequeg is a kind of a pre-religious pagan who doesn't worry about cosmology, doesn't worry. I mean, I think there's a part in the book where he's talking about Queequeg's tattoos. Someone from his clan or his tribe tattooed him and told him, what the cosmology of their tribe was, but Queequeg can't even read it. So Queequeg carries the answer to his own metaphysics literally on his skin, but it's irrelevant to him. He doesn't care. He's just fully kind of engaged in the world. And Ishmael is kind of in between. Ishmael sees evil. Ishmael sees problems. Ishmael sees the differences between people and their kind of the sins, but he doesn't engage with it. He takes a step back. And I think that's what makes him such an interesting narrator, because he's very descriptive and talks about things going on, but he's not necessarily judgmental, if that makes any sense. He's intrigued by the mystery of Ahab. He's intrigued by the mystery of Moby Dick, but we don't get the sense of investment in that mystery.
No, makes any sense. I would say Ishmael, what you see with him as the narrator is like a curiosity, an intellectual curiosity. Now there's humor, there's friendship, there's things like that. There's uncertainty to some degree. There's an acceptance of uncertainty because we can't know everything.
I think that's a key point.
With Ahab, we see something different. We see a certainty, if you know what I mean. But it's primarily focused. He's focused all his pain on this wheel. This wheel represents everything that is bad, everything that is evil. It's maimed him. It's scarred him. And I think it's interesting that what he doesn't seem to notice is the whale bit his leg off when he was attacking the whale, if you know what I mean. all of that seems irrelevant to them. So I think they're the differences between those two characters. Ishmael, as I say, there is an uncertainty, but he's kind of accepting of the uncertainty, and he faces it with a curiosity.
Richard, are you happy? Because I don't want to pick on you. Not that you can't stick up for yourself, but I don't want it to be like an intervention on your taste. But were you happy to talk about why you find it bloviating?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it probably makes the conversation more interesting if there's at least one of us here who's pretty harshly critical of it. I mean, I really found, and I'm learning something here. I found his optimism, openness, his goodness intensely fucking irritating. I'm not joking when I said I wanted to murder this enthusiastic, open-minded young man with my bare hands. I was like, will you fucking hate someone, please? Or judge someone? Ahab, far more, for me, relatable, full of loathing, full of, he's terrified, and all of his terror is changed into aggression. I was like, yes, that, now there we go. There's a character. So no, I'm happy to.
But devil's advocate, it's always one of my bugbears. Why is an author under pressure to make you like a character?
He shouldn't be, except that if the character is insufferable to the reader, they're probably not going to read the book. But you're right, it would be and this is your wheelhouse exactly, Paul. Like, so in modern literature, there are pressures, financial pressures, consumer pressures to make the main character likable, because it's now a piece of content to be consumed and potentially make money from, rather than just pure literature. A character can be loathsome. He wasn't loathsome enough. I didn't hate him because he's a bad person. I hated him because he was too fucking good.
No, I get that, but objectively, you did not like his character, irrespective of whether it was because he was too good or too bad. Sorry, Darren, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say, and I think I would agree with you, Richard, when it comes to a character, it's not that the character is likable, they are interesting. Like a character who is interesting.
And you didn't find Ishmael interesting, either of you?
Who's either? Is Darren just got stuck in my... just got stuck in camp with me. He loves him. I'm the bad guy here.
No, I thought Darren was just defending your position slightly.
No, I am. Yeah. We like a character who is interesting. What I said about the character is he has this curiosity and he faces things with a curiosity. He's friendly, he's humorous and things like that. To me, that doesn't necessarily make him good or bad.
I think he arrives, like, what you see is what you get from the beginning. It's it can, like, compared to like kind of more modern narrative structure where you see a character develop, go through trials and tribulations. Ishmael goes through trials and tribulations, but he stays the same. We don't get any big reveals. You know, he doesn't go through crisis, and we don't see his personality change. He's
There's
almost
no
like
character arc.
Could I just quickly, before Richard responds to you, I'll push back slightly on that, because at the beginning he's quite objective and critical about Ahab. But by the end, we could talk maybe about Trump derangement syndrome and the way in which Ahab acts as a dictator and a demagogue. But by the end, he's carried along with the rest of the crew, and he's quite enthusiastic participant in what happens. So in that sense, he loses the objectivity he had at the beginning. So I'd argue he does change in quite a significant way. And then he bobs up at the end in the coffin, the life preserver, literally.
Coffin, yeah. But possibly, I mean, I would very quickly just push back against that slightly. From what I got from the initial descriptions he gives of Ahab, he's critical. He says he's this, you know, this terrifying figure. He can see the darkness in his soul, so to speak. But then he also gives quite an optimistic reading of it. He's got family. It's hinted that he's got children. So I think Ishmael still sees the good side in him, as in he anticipates that, you know, he's not all bad. But I mean, that was only my first read. You've read it many more times.
And I think as well, I mean, if you want to think that maybe a character arc, I mean, Ahab has something of his own kind of development throughout it. The cabin boy and Pip, you know, who starts out as a bit of comic relief, really. He becomes quite a figure of tragedy towards the end, and Ahab kind of warms to him. So there's a little bit of
my reading of
development
that is that Ahab sees in him, basically, for those not familiar with the story, Pip is the black's cabin boy, and he is clumsy around when they go out to kill the whales. He's in one of the smaller whaling boats, and he falls out, and they rescue him, and he's told, if you do it again, we're not coming back for you. And he falls out, you know, predictably, and they take ages to go back. So he's stranded in the middle of the sea, and he basically has a mental breakdown because he's left to the void of the sea. And I think Ahab sees that. You know, Ahab, as Stuart said, has all these Gnostic overtones. He's fascinated with the meaning of life. He thinks, and there's a quote I could read later if you want, about the way Pip sees the void, the way Melville describes it. And I think Ahab is intrigued by the fact Pip has seen the void. And Ahab, to some extent, that's his quest. It's not just the white whale. He's this Faustian rebellion against God. And, and this is something else to discuss. Is the white whale God? Is the white whale evil? Is it the Leviathan from the Canaanite Baal myths? What is it? It's that and everything else. It's not one thing. So I think Ahab's absolutely fixated on the fact that Pip loses his mind, because Ahab himself, to some extent, has lost his mind.
Set peas in a pod.
Yeah, except Ahab would, you know, I think it's a brilliant Faustian character where he says losing your mind is the only rational thing to do in an irrational world.
Yeah.
You know, I'm putting words in his mouth, but he's basically saying, you tiny little sheep people, I've got the bollocks to stand up against this injustice, this cosmic injustice, and I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, or one knee and a half.
War.
Is that convincing you anymore, Richard?
No, and let me tell you why. So I got fixated on why everyone loves this book and I don't. And I thought, maybe I've genuinely gone insane this time. So I looked further into it, and the passages that really pissed me off were where we went away from the narrative into explanations of whaling and whales. And I was reading some of the descriptions of whales, and I was like, this is 1851. This reads like fantasy. So I went and looked it up, and it is like a tremendous amount of his descriptions, self-indulgent, incredibly verbose descriptions of whales, are simply made up. Now, is it not possible then that Melville, as the god of this world, is giving us like a little bit of a covert criticism of a guy who's too self-assured, he's too self-confident, he's stating things as fact that are just pure fantasy. And it's almost like a criticism of the scientific mind, the categorizing mind.
Oh yeah, you're right.
In that sense, so is Ishmael woefully naive and overenthusiastic?
Well,
I think
partly.
You go first, Paul. No, I was going to say, you've got the chapters about visual representations of whales. You've got the chapters about the scientific representations, anatomical descriptions. I think these chapters are really Ishmael in his head, trying to work out and show the plurality of kind of epistemic representation of the whale. He's basically saying the whale is all this and not this at the same time. This one creature has different representations depending on what you look at it. Therefore, we can't really get to the whale as it is, the absolute factual whale, because you have a scientific view saying this is true, which, as you rightly point out, Richard, is not true. You have the visual representation, the difficulty of actually recording this well. You have to remember at this time, I mean, this is kind of pre, really deep biology. This is pre kind of Greenpeace, save the whale. We start to learn a lot more about these creatures. The discussion about, is it a fish? Is it a mammal? What is it? Ishmael's saying, I kind of feel it's not a fish, but then all these other whalers are saying it is a fish, therefore it must be a fish. But then it has eyelids, it has this and that. And the idea of those chapters is rightly so to pull you out of the narrative, to make you start thinking. It's almost like kind of a rhetorical device, like, what is it we're actually chasing? I can write down whale on the page and say, this is a standard, sea shanty. We have an angry pirate chasing a whale, and that's it. But the same point, to kind of point to the fact that Ahab himself kind of he doesn't necessarily know what he's chasing, or he's using the whale as a representation of something a lot deeper. These kind of chapters, and they do go on. They they're quite, heady and not pleasurable to read at times. But just to summarize, he's trying to point out that the whale is more than the sum of its parts, and we don't really know what it is ultimately. So
it remains unknowable.
It remains unknowable. We think we know it, even when we know it. One person's knowledge of the whale is factually incorrect.
Could I just say that what I think the main reason I think Richard's completely wrong is that in the chat, in Continent J in Texas completely agrees with Richard. And on Readers in the Lost Art, the rough rule is of thumb, whatever Jay says, we adopt the opposite attitude. Isn't that right, Stuart?
If he's from Texas, he's from God's country, and his word is worth 5 of ours, so he's correct. We must accept that
he's got a compound, Richard.
Yeah, he's a Waco, he's a Wacoist. He has a compound.
Guns, Texas, God's country.
He's got it all, yeah.
Right, but could I defend?
No, you can't.
I can't.
Wait,
right.
I need to quickly ask Stu a question. Stu, would the people reading at the time? I'm a little bit thick sometimes, so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's 1852. I've got the copy of the book in my hands. Biology is where it is at that point. As I'm reading the book, do I, as the reader, know that my narrator is not being reliable? Am I supposed to know, or do I not know?
No, from what I've read is when it was released, like nobody had an effing clue what it was about. It was like it actually, it was a box office flop, so to speak. And it wasn't until a little bit later when you had the kind of more modern novels like Proust and Ulysses and things like that, when people revisited it and just thought, actually, there's a hell of a lot of depth in here.
When he does, Stu, just to quickly help give you some stats, because you know how I like stats and empirical measurements. By the time he died, Moby Dick had only sold 3,715 copies. Loser. So, and Richard's completely correct. It was only in the 1920s that later on, in the 1920s and onwards, people like Hemingway lauded it, and Hemingway was immensely competitive and said the only writer I want to compete with is Melville. So Hemingway thought he was the cat's pajamas. So no, Richard. Anyway, Stu, I interrupted you.
No, that you've made the point. It didn't sell very well. People didn't have a clue what was going on. The actual kind of comparative religion connection was unearthed later. I think it's through Melville's journals and some biographical facts. Paul, you can help me out on this. I made a note of it, but I just want to double check. Wasn't there some insinuation that he had kind of homosexual tendencies, or he was in some sort of relationship with another writer at the time? I can't remember the guy's name though.
Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Nathaniel Hawthorne. Yeah, I don't think it was full on. It was never as deep.
They were just touching the shower.
Yeah, that was never as deep as Richard and I back in the day.
No, it wasn't Proust and his brothel. Yeah.
Just the tip.
I told you we'd do this. Unbelievable.
Sorry.
Unbelievable.
But I did 27 minutes. That's impulse control. I think it's a gay book. I really do think it's a gay book.
Yeah, but you say that of everything, Richard. Yeah. You name me one book we've done that you haven't said that's a gay book.
It's all gay. It's just full of gayness. It's everywhere. I mean, it has. There's a description by a character called Carpenter speaking of Ahab, and he says he's queer. He's queer. The word queer features 36 times in the book. And I went and looked, and I was like, was there an overtone at the time that queer would be homosexual? And it's like very, very slightly, yes, very, very slightly. But there's plenty in the book that is, for me, it wouldn't be homosexual as we understand it today. Obviously, it can't be.
It's not a homoerotic novel.
No, but Queequeg at the beginning, at the inn, the Spouter Inn, it's hardly Morecambe and Wise, is it?
Spouter, is that
do you know what I mean, though? They're in bed together.
In this book.
Yeah, they're in. Oh God, here we go.
Sperm whale war.
Hunt the big monster. It's hidden.
Well, you're also missing the bit at the end. He writes a whole chapter so we can get a pun about the guy, the mincer, who is chopping up the Bible leaves of the flesh, and he's wearing the whale's foreskin as a cassock.
Yeah, there we
So,
go. And
in
that's
case
it.
you're in any doubt,
Yeah,
I thought the
that's right.
Queequeg, I thought the romping in bed with Queequeg at the very beginning
Mm.
was a bit of a hint.
Yeah.
And the fact they're on a ship in the middle of nowhere for years on end, I'm sorry, there's going to be a bit of...
Yeah, no, that's what I read with this Mr. Hawthorne character. There's some insinuation that there was, you know, at least some, if it wasn't a sexual relationship, it was kind of a like a chivalrous romance, so to speak.
Sort of a Greek love.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, that Melville he wrote a what he called the Gnostic poem. It was the fragments of a lost Gnostic poem of the 12th century, and he wrote it in a way as though, like, he said he found this poem as like a bit like kind of a religious mystery cult kind of thing. But it's understood that he wrote it himself. And the poem goes, it's 2 stanzas. It's found a family, build a state. The pledged event is still the same. Matter in end will never abate his ancient brutal claim. And it's basically, it draws heavily on like ancient Christian Gnosticism, kind of non-canonical Christian, you know, before the church, before the Orthodox Church. And it's basically talking about the idea that kind of physicality, materiality. So you think of a family building a state, the highest achievements of classical civilization. Melville's basically setting this up to say this is the highest striving, these physical things, you know, by making a family, building a steady society. This is right. But in Gnosticism, the idea that the physical world is the true world is false. So there's this idea that instead of having a God made the world, the physical world that we have in Scripture, in the canonical Bible, the person or the entity that made the physical world is basically like a demon, a devil, a Yaldabaoth. That's the one. It emanated from the real God, the monad, or I think there's a couple of other terms they use. There's different sects of Gnosticism. Barbelo, that's it. No, Barbelo is the emanation from the monad. So Barbelo is the first principle. That's like the first thing that comes. And then Barbelo is like an androgynous kind of, it's male and female, but mainly female entity. Sometimes it's represented as basically an androgynous.
Is that what that Beach Boys song was about?
Barbelo.
No,
Paul. No,
I'm trying. Sorry.
But yeah, so Melville's basically saying that even though you build a family, you build a world, the pledge event is still the same. Whatever you build, whatever you pledge, the outcome is guaranteed, because the physical things will always corrode, they will always corrupt. So matter and end will never abate, the ancient brutal claim. It's like matter is not neutral, matter is not the be-all end-all. It's a claimant. So you sow your life, you invest in life, the physical world, building a family, building a society, but ultimately it will collapse, it will be taken away. So it's an inversion of Protestantism. It's an inversion of the typical canonical Christianity. And I think once this poem was found and once it was understood, a lot more scholars kind of reread Moby Dick and just they saw this, I guess, like heretical religious angle throughout the whole novel.
Well, yeah, I'd slightly push back in the sense that it's got Zoroastrianism in it. Yeah. It's got the Old Testament left, right, and center. It's got, if we had time, you could do a whole talk on the Job element.
Manichaeism as well.
And he came from a Calvinist background, and I read somewhere that Calvin had written 165 sermons on the book of Job. And that was the upbringing Melville had. And then you've got Job, you've got the whole Ahab being the Ahab of the Bible, you've got the Ishmael. I just think it works at loads of levels, and my defense of it would be it works at loads of levels, and even the characters themselves take on properties of each other. So I think it's wrong to see Ishmael as in a certain way, because sometimes he takes on he thinks he can possess the world with words. And I think maybe that's what Richard's responding against.
Yeah,
he's trying to control the world with words. And that's why I think it is a pastiche, it's a parody. When he describe himself as a sub librarian, and then he produces all this like marginalia at the very beginning of the book. So before you've even got going, there's about 20 odd pages of marginalia about collected quotes and about random marginal comments about whales, and it's a maybe it's too self-congratulatory postmodern type, and I think that's why it wasn't picked up until the 1920s. It's a commentary, it's a narration about narration. It's about how there isn't one, it's what you were saying, Stuart, there isn't one true story. It's multiple perspectives, and science cannot explain. So all this cetology that he goes into, the mechanics of whales, the meta point being made, I'd argue, is that so what? You can see the skeletons of whales. It doesn't help you understand anything. And you can hear loads of different people. One specific example, you know, when he, at the very near the beginning of the book, well, it's near the beginning, it's when Ahab first gets seen, and I don't think that's till about chapter 28.
Yeah, it takes a while.
And he nails a doubloon to the mast. And from memory, Ishmael then gives a commentary on how he perceives everybody else's thinking about that doubloon. So at various points, Ishmael takes on this omniscient author, this omniscient narrator quality, and he says things he couldn't possibly know. And all of these people have a completely different reaction to the golden doubloon, and they see things in the images on the doubloon. And the sun's shining on it, and it's about the gold. And at the time, there was a gold rush in California, and there's the Mexican War in 1848. So America, the manifest destiny of expanding. It's the Cormac McCarthy stuff, Richard, of going into New Mexico and claiming it for America type stuff. So all of these things are in it. And one last thing. So I think you're right, Richard, and it's funny you don't like it, but your analysis of why it's written the way it is completely correct. He's making a commentary about commentary. He's saying no one has the ultimate truth. But the bloviation and everything that lots of people don't like, I'd also say it's so clever, because if you're stuck at sea, you'd probably be having an endless conversation like this. There would be months on end of boredom and nothing happening. And that's also what part of the book's effect. You're reading this endless trivial information because there's a calm at sea before the random death-dealing action. Darren, what do you think?
Sorry.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you, Richard. It was just that Darren.
No, you go ahead, Richard. I'll speak in a moment. Sure, you go ahead.
Stu mentioned the Gnostic poem, so I looked it up. The second part says, Paul, you'll like this. Indolence, meaning laziness, is heaven's ally here, an energy the child of hell. So is as if indolence is heaven's ally in a Gnostic world where there's no point building a family, building a state, because the Lord's ancient claim will smash everything down anyway. Do nothing, you're heaven's ally. When you're energetic, you're the child of hell. The good man pouring from his pitcher clear, but brims the poisoned well. Could there be a covert criticism of Ishmael's naivety and enthusiasm that's intentional from Melville?
Well, but you say that. I'd question, at the very beginning, do you remember the beginning whereby he says, when it smell like the dreary, dull November takes my soul? I'm paraphrasing badly. He's basically sounds, it's like Churchill's Black Dog. He's bipolar, or he's a manic depressive.
Oh, yeah. No,
and he goes out to sea to get rid of, he actually says, if I don't, I'll go down the street knocking people's hats off. Yeah. Because he needs this, you've said in the past, I have this oppositional defiance syndrome. It's the type of thing I'd do, but I'd never want to go out to sea. I would just go knocking hats off people. But the only reason I don't is I very rarely leave the sofa. So I've got this Ishmael. For him, my sofa is my ship. So this is all making perfect sense. And I will sit there in my sea of indolence.
I think the energy, the child of hell, in kind of Valentinian and Sethian Gnosticism, which are the sects of Gnosticism that we know the most about, and that you get a lot of the YouTube videos on. I think it's this idea that if you put energy into the physical world, building things, doing things, you're running yourself ragged. You're not doing it for your benefit. It's basically in Gnostic cosmology, you're doing it for the benefit of the demiurge. You're not kind of taking time to be a bit more kind of philosophical, pondering, take a moment, have a think. If you're going to the gym, building a website, hustling, you're putting that energy into building a material world that ultimately is you're going to die and you're not going to be part of that world anymore. Whereas if you put that energy, it's not kind of like idolatry and indolence, as in I'm just going to sit on the sofa playing Xbox. It's more taking a step back, thoughtful, pondering, the arts, the engaging in poetry, literature, I would say, thinking about why am I here? Why am I alive? Instead of just presuming what I see is real and I'm going to interact with this stuff. And it's this idea that you do things just physically without thinking. You're feeding that kind of metaphorical demiurge. That's not the real God. But yeah, I mean, Gnosticism, we only know what we know about it primarily through, I've written his name down somewhere.
Haters. We know about it through its haters, through its critics.
That's it, through the haters, yeah. And there was one specific one. Irenaeus. Yeah, Irenaeus. I think he was the first bishop of Lyon. This is like 2nd century AD. And he wrote a book, and it was basically on heresies, I think it was called. And like you say, we only know about it because of what was said negatively about it until we found the Nag Hammadi library in Egypt. I think it was about 1942, 1945. Then we had all these fragments. Then we started to realize there was this incredibly kind of fertile cross-pollination of ideas between Platonism, Neoplatonism, Hellenistic classics, early Christianity, Jewish cosmology, like in the area at the time. And it wasn't until the church kind of like canonized and said, right, this is what's going to be Christianity. This is what's going to be all about. There was this period of potentially, 200, 300, 400 years when lots of different ideas came about. And it's very interesting where I think you see Melville. I think you're right, Paul, to say it isn't specifically about Gnosticism. There's a lot of these early ideas and the early religions that have kind of got lost to the midst of time. I think in Melville's time, Christianity was locked in, Protestantism was locked in, Catholicism was still big in Europe. And I guess Melville is saying, like, these were the has-runs, these were the also-rans, and they're incredibly fertile. And there's a lot of stuff here that we can play with. So it's multi-layered, and yeah, I think that really makes the novel, makes it confusing unless you know what it's about, unless you know what his sources were, but it also makes it revisitable and incredibly rich.
One last attempt, Richard, to try and get you to like it. And I know it's not going to work, but hey-ho, I like a challenge. Didn't you see any links between Moby Dick and the Judge from Blood Meridian?
100%. I'm glad you brought it. That's why it's called Ahab's negation.
Yeah.
So Ishmael's attempt to categorize the world is mirrored in Judge Holden's attempt to categorize everything and then destroy it to become the suzerain of the earth. And Ahab is archontic in the way that Judge Holden is, and in the way that Anton Chigurh is in No Country for Old Men. These people are not just humans. They're representative of some kind of force, and it probably could be seen as a Gnostic, archontic, lord-like force. But they're all tragic. They all get it wrong. And their tragedy, the tragic arc that they will go through, like a planet going through a solar system, which is how some Gnostics saw the archons they assign to different planets, is they're also, they may be the lords, but they're the lords of a prison that they themselves are trapped inside of. And Ahab's destruction is written into the software of his mission. In some sense, probably if you were a Freudian, you'd say he did that. Well, the book is pursuing Ahab's self-destruction. That's the obsession. Is the whale is the rock that humanity chooses to smash itself upon, because you could leave the whale the fuck alone. You can leave the sea alone. You don't have to go there, but we do. So yeah, I do see a lot of Judge Holden in this book, which I did enjoy. I did enjoy that side of it, Paul.
Well, the one thing I'd throw in as well, it links slightly with Stuart's observations about Gnosticism. They found that there's various complexities. There's a whole book called Inscrutable Malice, which does a forensic linkage of all the biblical references and doesn't even claim to do all of them. But one of the interesting things is Leviathan is an ambiguous character, because in various books of the Old Testament, Leviathan was a creation of God, and he's just swimming around being a goldfish on acid. But he's part of God's creation. In other versions, in the eschatological, the end of the world type writings, he's the opposing force of evil that God has to overcome. So the idea of it being a creation of God is played down. There is, so he's this big white figure that represents God, and sometimes he actually represents the antithesis of God. So it's really ambivalent, and I do find that interesting that he plays with that ambivalence. And just quickly, Richard's point about the prison wall. There's a speech that when he's being very demagogic, Ahab basically says, "I will not accept this prison. I will punch through the wall of my prison." And that's the Faustian element of Ahab. And that's, even though he's presented as a monomaniac, maniacal, nutter, there's something about this resistance to what he perceives to be if not even the injustice of life, the intractability, the fact that we can't defeat life. And he seems to know that he's not going to come to a good end. But it's this Faustian, sod you, I will rise up, and if I die, I die. Yep. And there is something, it's like Lucifer in Paradise Lost.
It's like Milton Satan, yeah.
And I do think that, from memory, I do think Melville had read, he was very familiar with Paradise Lost. Oh, but before I forget, and I'll shut up and let Darren speak, Stuart, that they found out that all this stuff about the Leviathan and its ambiguous nature, it was reinforced, the Canaanite god Baal.
Yeah, which is what the biblical Ahab brought Baal worship into
exactly
Israel.
But it wasn't actually, you see, all the Baal type stuff was contained in the Old Testament, but they didn't know until the 1920s they found the actual original Canaanite myths. So Melville was writing a lot of this from the Old Testament interpretation of the Canaanite myths, and then they actually got to see some of the originals. So there's all these historical layers. And
so many different versions of these myths,
So, Darren, we've kept you out the conversation.
I can't remember what I was going to say a few minutes ago, so I'll keep talking until it comes back. Someone said earlier on about the religious stuff, and I think it's interesting with Ahab. You see, he had brought in all the Baal worship, things like that in the Old Testament. In the Ahab in the book, you see something quite anti-religious. In the you'll have to correct me, Paul. I can't remember if this is the book or if this is one of the movies, but there's pardon me, there's the priest's pulpit, which is like shaped like the front of a ship. God's wisdom guiding you through life's perilous seas and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas Ahab is very, I would say he's high in conscientiousness.
Father Mapple's pulpit.
It's the story of Jonah.
Also, the different perceptions around things like the gold doubloon that you mentioned. People are seeing different things in it. Ahab is really seeing, I guess, his own power to be able to control, bribe, and all that sort of thing. The ship's mission is to go whaling. He is above that. So it's interesting you're getting other people's perceptions are different from how Ahab is seeing things. Even the first officer, he would see God, mercy, kindness, and things like that. He's the, if you will, the opposite of Ahab. But Ahab is very focused, very driven, and everything that, if you were to read it on paper prior to setting out, it is everything is going to doom that voyage. And yet he's followed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned, Darren, that there's a part in it, I can't remember which chapter, but Ishmael notices and talks about the fact that he sees Ahab. He's so focused on this project of killing this whale, but even Ahab knows he needs to be political about it. He's not going to do this on his own. And I think that the balloon is, if you want to take a pop culture example, Lord of the Rings, it is almost like the ring of power. The balloon becomes like the MacGuffin to represent Ahab's kind of political control or social control. So he's not he's someone who's totally focused on the tasks, but he's not that focused as in that he doesn't realize the mechanics of the project.
Yeah.
He still knows I need to do this to do this.
He creates competition. He creates competition. There's incentive among the crew. First one to spot the wheel gets the doubloon. He creates that competition. He's trying to galvanize them. He's trying to get them to do what it is he wants them to do.
And Starbuck is the one that doesn't go against it. Yeah, that character Starbuck.
I think Starbuck is an interesting character. What do you make of him, folks?
He's almost like the super ego, isn't he, to some extent? Or maybe the ego. You're the
conscience,
Darren.
maybe the conscience.
Yeah. He goes along with it all in the end, kind of thing. But he's resistant. He's the one. There's no reasoning behind why he's not going to do it. It's just a feeling. I feel this is wrong. I feel.
Well, I think he actually. He only goes along with it. I think there's a clever bit in which Ahab is so manipulative, which is one of the reasons I really admire him. Model myself on him. But he basically says Starbucks is giving him grief and is being the conscience. But he basically he plays on his vanity. He says, "You're the best harpooner I've ever seen. Why would you miss this opportunity?"
So it shows he can be corrupted. Yeah.
Even Starbucks, who's this conscience who plays it with a straight bat all the time, he can't resist that peaking of his pride. So that's the little devil in Ahab, insinuating itself into his conscience. So
like
all
any
of that,
manipulator, telling you what you want to hear.
But you could use Ahab if you were a poli-sci student, you could use Ahab as a study in demagogic rhetoric, the way and the tricks he uses. He uses he repairs the magnet, doesn't he? And he does the trick with the harpoon, with the St. Elmo's fire. He does all these tricks to impress people, and he is like a prestidigitator, whatever you call them, a conjurer.
Yeah.
And the rhetoric is what persuades people. So Richard's talking about the language Ishmael uses. He's over verbose. I can talk. He's florid, but he's trying to play with the playfulness of words. And I think deep down he knows he can't control the world. He knows his endless definitions of whales. He does this fast whales and loose whales thing, doesn't he? And then I think a part of his description, he actually says, but there are exceptions to all these definitions. And he realizes his definitions are taking him nowhere. So where Ahab uses rhetoric to manipulate people, Ishmael comes to the realization that rhetoric gets you nowhere. But hey, it's still fun. So
So I was going to say, it goes back to what we mentioned a moment ago about trying to know the unknowable, trying to define it.
Yeah. And you can't, but what you can do is engage with all these interesting perspectives, and you can have intimations of the truth. And this is why, my channel, I'm always never stop going on about literature does it better than anything else. That's the Carly Simon thing, isn't it, Stu? Nobody does it better.
Nobody does it better. Yeah, it was a Bond song, wasn't it? I went and checked after.
Starbuck means, it's from ancient Norse, and it comes from Storbocki, which means a good man or a great man. I looked up Ahab, and it's not just that he was a Baal worshipper. He was originally a Yahweh worshipper, and he turns against Yahweh, marries Jezebel, and then starts promoting Baal. Now, if I'd looked that up, I may have looked at Ahab or being more biblically literate. I may have looked at him differently. Obviously, he must be seen as a defiant, rebellious, non-acceptor of God's will. Because if he was indolent in the best sense that you mentioned before, Stu, from the Gnostic poem, he would just stay at home and, I don't know, watch sunsets.
Rage at the sky. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's interesting because the biblical Ahab, he dies a pretty kind of pathetic, sudden death. I think there's a battle against the Syrians, and he gets killed by a stray arrow. And the myth is that after he's killed by a stray arrow, dogs lick his blood, to say you're nothing now. And it's quite funny the way that Ahab just suddenly gets dragged under the water. He had this big grand quest, and then suddenly it's like, Ahab's dead, gets sucked in the water. That's it. Yeah, so he dies like the biblical king.
In the original Ahab story, there's prophecies. He gets told. He basically only goes to the prophets that will tell him what he wants to hear. And the one prophet who warns him not to have the third battle, he ignores. But he does show.
He's the Fadala character. Fadala gives the prophets to Ahab very similarly.
But he does. There is a slight sympathy. It's a bit like Faust getting rescued at the very end of Faust. Plot spoiler, but he shows some repentance. So I think that the punishment God gives him is awful, but he spares the rest of his descendants because he shows some conciliatory emotions. Whereas Ahab, God bless him, doesn't. But I also think there's links because, forgive me, it begins with an N. Is it Namoth or Naboth? There's a vineyard that in the Bible, King Ahab, he has everything, but he then decides he wants this vineyard, and I think Jezebel's in his ear. And
the guy won't sell it. That's right.
Yeah, so he has him killed, and
sounds
he
like Greenland.
It. But it's a very insightful thing about when you have everything, you still want more. You can't be satisfied.
Yeah.
And thank you. Someone, Night Sky, said Naboth. It's that pettiness. So even if Ahab had everything, everyone still needs this thing to drive towards.
Yeah. Well, sorry, go ahead.
No. You go ahead, Darren.
No, I was just going to say that it reminds me of what I was saying earlier on, that, I mean, he was a whaler. He'd been whaling for, can't remember, but lots of years, a couple of decades at least. And as he's hunting this whale, he ends up losing his leg. And then he spends the rest of his days trying to get revenge on the thing that hurt him for not letting him hurt it in the first place. Now, how many people, cluster B types and so on, how many people sit and plot the revenge? They shake their fist, they hate the world, and they want to take revenge on the person they tried to hurt, that they didn't get to hurt, either that or they were held to account. Guys sitting in prison, maybe, plotting revenge against the person that gave evidence against them and so on, because it's so damned unfair.
But could I suggest, Darren, that it may be slightly deeper than that, in the sense that I think Ahab is fully self-aware of the pointlessness of what he's doing. So it's not revenge in the sense he thinks, even if he killed the white whale. I think deep down he knows it's pointless.
That's a very good point. That is a very good question. I mean, let's imagine the story does go his way. Let's imagine he kills the whale. What then? Who is he? What's he for?
Yeah,
that becomes his whole identity.
There's also the
becomes his whole purpose. Sorry, Stuart.
There's also the reading that Ahab kind of sees himself as the ultimate good versus the ultimate evil. So there's the link with this. The Fadala character is, I think, his ethnic group is like a Parsi. He's like a Persian outcasts that fled to India, from what I've read, when Persia, modern day Iran, was conquered by the Muslims, and in Zoroastrianism, they have the Aura Mazda, which is like the light or truth or creation, versus the Angra Mainyu, which is darkness, destruction, and chaos. So there's a very clear distinction. But like yin yang in Asian philosophy, they need each other. You can't have one without the other.
Balance.
And the Saint, exactly, pure balance, And the Saint Elmo's fire scene has been linked to Zoroastrianism because fire plays a very important part. So he basically, Ahab thinks he's Ahura Mazda. He takes on the pure form of fire, purifying fire that he's going to purify. So we've gone beyond simple revenge story, arguably, and it becomes this cosmic significance. But you could read psychologically that he is so consumed with revenge, he's had to rationalize it as this biblical, religious, transcendental revenge to justify it to himself. Otherwise, like you said, if he took a step back, if he was the Ishmael, and he took a step back and analyzed it, then maybe laziness is the best path to take. Hey, I've lost a leg. I don't want to lose another leg. I've got a wife and kids. I'm going to stay at home. Yeah. But it takes on this really intense, religious significance to him.
If, on the other hand, the opposite is true. Do you remember the bit where I can read it out to you if you can't remember it? So you'll need to say you do remember it. But the bit where I think Ishmael talks about the whiteness of the whale.
Yeah, I've got that.
I found that fascinating because it's the idea that we always associate darkness with evil, but it's the lack of color of the white whale. Ishmael interprets as this epitome of evil. So all I'd say is it's not just. I do think this confrontation with absolute evil isn't just confined to Ahab. you also see it in some of Ishmael's interpretations. And this is my point about, you see features of the different characters across the crew.
Yeah,
I think it's a mistake to see them as unified creatures. And the one other thing, while it's fresh in my mind, is, like John Donne from the sermon he did, No Man is an Island. I think the whole book, if you had to sum it up, would be every man is a bloody big island. If I had to give one little epigraph to sum up the book. And it doesn't, at one point, he actually refers to the people as, he uses a particular phrase about isolatos, I think he uses the phrase. All of the people on the ship come from radically different backgrounds, and yes, they all work together, but ultimately they're unique, atomized people. And in that sense, I think it's quite, Ishmael survives at the end and stuff, but it's quite a negative, like I say, anti-John Donne, No Man is an Island type thing. Silent.
The whiteness. No, just to add to the whiteness aspect, Paul, what I was interested in is, like, we think of white is the absence of color, but at the same time, white can be all colors at once. I mean, do you think of like a LED light bulb, those multicolored light bulbs that you can put up and do a disco in your bedroom? To get the white color, they turn on all the primary colors on at once, and that creates white light. So whiteness is everything, like it kind of indivisible everything all at once. But at the same time, to make white paint, you have pigments that absorb and reflect nothing. So you create a nothingness. So it's this dualism again that you find in a lot of comparative religions, that it's terrifying, because it is this and it is that at the same time, and we don't ever fully get to the crux of it. We cannot fully define it. We cannot fully define whiteness, and I think that's the anxiety and the terror.
It's the ambiguity.
Yeah,
it's the ambiguity. Yeah, it's and if you think it's a whale, to Ahab, the whale is evil. It's evil personified. Reality, it's a whale. There is no intent. It is neither good nor bad. So again, it's coming back to perceptions, isn't it?
The bit I found about.
It's very ironic. It's very ironic to be surrounded by a bunch of white colonizers who struggle to define why whiteness is evil. Proceed, Paul. I just needed to. I had to get it out.
Well, speaking of,
I would like just to add, just for my little bit of social points, because I'm down a few. I find the book deeply problematic because whales are an endangered species.
Well, can I speak as someone who looks like a cross between an Old Testament prophet and Colonel Sanders, as was pointed out the other day? I will now defend whiteness, because unlike the rest of you, I don't use Grecian 2000. Neither does Darren, to be fair to Darren. Darren's let
live in a
himself
hot
go
country.
naturally. No, you other two dye your hair people. It's chapter 42, the whiteness of the whale. I feel like Humza Yusuf now. Oh, white. Oh, white. The demonism in the world. I'm using ellipses. Not all of this is the complete quote. The demonism in the world shadows forth the heartless voids and immensities of the universe, and this stabs us from behind with the thought of annihilation. But then he goes on. The sweet tinges of sunset skies and woods, yea, and the gilded velvets of butterflies and the butterfly cheeks of young girls. All these are but subtle deceits, not actually inherent in substances, but only laid on from without, so that all deified nature absolutely paints like the harlot, whose allurements cover nothing but the charnel house within. Pondering all this, the palsied universe lies before us, a leper. And of all these things, the albino whale was the symbol. Wonder ye then at the fiery hunt? I think it's absolutely stunning. But there's an element of truth in all good, pantomime baddies. There's an element of truth, and he could be describing politics the way, this veneer of civilization, and underneath the charnel house. And to that extent, Ahab's not wrong.
Yeah. He could also be discussing like the concept of the abjection that behind our everyday, the rosy cheeks of the maiden and the flowers. It's like we are corpses, we are body parts, and this is the materiality aspect of the rejection of the material world in Gnosticism. So the fact that we can read that passage, Paul, in two different ways, and there's probably multiple ways of reading that. I mean, you could probably write a master's thesis just on that paragraph.
Stu, could not the whiteness be that inevitability of where we're all going to go? All ethnicities go pale when they're sick. Everybody goes paler when they're dead, and ultimately, when bones are bleached, we're all white. And maybe that's where the whiteness is the inevitable doom of all humanity. Why white would be more frightening than blackness, than darkness? Maybe.
Can I add to that, Richard?
Yeah.
Can I add to that? It might sound a piece of trivia, but I actually think it backs up your point, because it's the whiteness of bones. The story upon which Moby Dick was actually based, it was called the Essex. There was a ship, and it was attacked by a sperm whale. And only a few, I think 5 of the men survived out of 20 odd. And when they found them, what happened was they're in a ship, one of the little whaling boats, and they were the only people who survived. And they had to decide if they went, there were some Western Isles, I think it was in the Pacific Ocean. If they went to the islands, they were quite nearby. They didn't want to go because there was the rumor there were cannibals there. So they went 3,000 miles to the coast of South America, and only 5 of them survived. And when they found them in the boat, they had human bones in the boat. So they turned in to the cannibals they didn't want to go to the island to be with.
Yeah.
Wow.
What a twist.
And that works at so many levels.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, in a really deeply sick sort of way. But the very thing that you're scared of, you end up becoming. And that was the real life story of the Essex.
Were they pardoned? Were they going to be? Is this the story where they were going to hang them, and then they were pardoned at the last minute because of the extremity of the situation?
I don't know how it ended up. I just know that was the.
So. Yeah,
well, there's 2 books I'd recommend. One is, it sounds like a wanky title, but there's a Nathaniel Philbrick wrote a book called Why Read Moby Dick, and he writes really well. It's only about 120 pages. But he also did a book called In the Heart of the Sea, and it was from the island of Nantucket. It was called the Essex, and he writes a whole book about the case. And he's just a very good writer, and it's a light read. So if you didn't like Moby Dick, I think most people would still like In the Heart of the Sea. And I'm not affiliated to his publishing company.
There's an affiliated link.
There's a neurologically very literate section in the book that I did like, where they start talking about phantom limb syndrome before phantom limb syndrome was being named. And I thought Ahab even goes so far, keeping in with the Faust theme, as to say, I can feel my leg, even though there's no leg there. Will you not feel your body in death when you suffer the torments of hell, even though your body is gone? Because Ahab's upbeat like that. And I started thinking, there's a leg-shaped hole in Ahab's life that drives him. The leg's gone, but he still feels it. Maybe there's also that God-shaped hole. What we're supposed to see is there's a God-shaped hole in his life. Yes, he's defiant, he's rebellious. He said if the sun insults him, he would smite the sun. Let blasphemy be damned. But isn't this... Darren, is that a reaction formation in Freudian defense mechanisms?
Yeah, I think that would be a good description of it. Yeah. And I'd said at the beginning, I think it's a good example of when someone pursues to try to fight, take down, destroy, attack, whatever, the demons, whether they're perceived or otherwise, that are in front of them, as opposed to the ones that are within them. So I think that would be a good description of it. So then
it would be, to keep with the Freudian theme, it would be projection. So all of Ahab's hatred and because he's full of hatred and full of rage, is projected onto this.
Oh, sorry.
Why'd you take it that way? Is projected onto this white wall of a creature. And it's this perfect tabula rasa for his to project his own id onto his own suppressed.
And again, when he's trying to flatter Starbuck, you're the best harpooner and so on. I mean, that would be another example of reaction formation in order to keep Starbuck on board, rather than order him, or rather than come down like, you know, Captain Bligh or whatever. No, it's
No, Ahab's too smart. Ahab's too smart to
yes,
do Captain Bligh,
calculate. I was going to use calculated. He was calculated in how he kept Starbuck on board.
So before this is slightly random, Richard, but you know your liking of Blood Meridian, the Canaanite Baal creature, their version of Leviathan. One of the versions, one of its pseudonyms, was Judge River, or River Judge.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just curious whether Cormac McCarthy knew that. It might be a complete linguistic association coincidence.
He might have known, Paul. I mean, Richard, there's a couple of academic papers where people have linked Moby Dick with Blood Meridian, and they talked about Judge Holden and, you know, the concept of evil. So there's definitely been some connections made. I think if you just search Blood Meridian Moby Dick evil on Google, there's a couple of papers you can download.
I'd love that. I saw a lot. I saw a lot between the two characters. They're almost like not opposites, but like mirror images of thematically mirror images of each other in some sense.
Again, it's just a little association, but you know, you mention of phantom limbs. It's interesting that the are they South Sea Islanders that he has as his crack squad, but he has them hidden. They don't. The rest of the crew don't know they're there. I think
the Parsees, this Fidela character. Yeah.
I think before you see Fidela, don't you hear him laughing or something? They think they get the sense someone's around.
They think they hear something. Yeah, this is no. It must be a bat or something. Like that.
They play the role of almost literal phantoms, and there's a phantom limb. I love the way there are all these layers of appearance and disappearance.
Well, Fidela's been analysed as Ahab's like daemonic double. It's like. It's not like a Mephistopheles, like whispering in the ear, do this, do that. It's almost like Ahab's shadow personified, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
I think it makes more sense. I think, was it Richard, you talked about Nathaniel Hawthorne? When I read a bit of the biography, his relationship to Hawthorne, the wife of, I think she was called Sarah, Hawthorne's wife, described, I'll try and find it later on in my notes, but she describes how Melville was a bit fixated with him. I think Hawthorne was approximately 15 years older than him. And he was all excitable, Melville, and Hawthorne was very stolid and placid. And the way she describes it, Melville would be rabbiting on, and there would be this impassive, stolid, silent encouragement from Hawthorne. But that reminded me of what you were saying about the Parsees, the way in which he doesn't insinuate, he's not Mephistophelian, he's impassive, and I think Ahab reads into his impassivity what he wants to see.
Yeah.
So I'm just pointing out, I think that actual relationship in the novel, I think, has echoes of his relationship to Hawthorne in real life.
Oh, so Hawthorne is the Moby Dick in his life. He's the one he can project everything onto.
In a good way, because he thought Hawthorne was the cat's pajamas.
Interesting. And gay.
Well, I think there's a guy called Andrew in the comments. He said he thought that The Scarlet Letter was one of the most disappointing, unenjoyable books he'd ever read. So I might do that on the channel, because Melville... No, seriously, I like a challenge, but Melville basically said that he thought Hawthorne there were layers of darkness in his work. And initially, Melville, when he wrote Moby Dick, he'd done almost a full draft, but Ahab wasn't even in it. And it wasn't dark. It was just like a pirate story. And it was only through his interaction with Hawthorne that he introduced the darkness. And he said it was Hawthorne's work that was the major influence on his actual writing. And I don't think many people see Hawthorne as a dark writer, so that's why I'm going to go away again. And basically, I'm going to punish Andrew for not liking Scarlet Letter by doing about 4 videos on it. That'll show him.
I wonder as well, when you look at Ahab and how he's driven, it'd be very easy to say that it's largely trauma driven. And I'm not saying it wouldn't mean the guy's been badly scarred, he's been maimed and everything. But given that he commands a ship, and going back to those days, imagine you had to be stern, you had to be strong, but you also had to be very driven. And I wonder if what you see in some of the behavior would suggest obsessive compulsive personality. What do you think, Richard?
Yeah, probably, because it's always tempting, isn't it, to say, oh, here we have psychopathy, here we have narcissism, and Melville, all the way back in 1851, is presenting us with something that, no, it's actually something more nuanced than that. An obsessive compulsive personality disorder is often mistook for narcissistic personality. So even by clinicians, because of this rigidity, like my fantasy, it's like the conversations we've had, Darren, my fantasy of the world must show up in the world or else. And people go, oh, narcissism, but no, it can be just obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I think that's a good observation.
I don't have it with me. I did this earlier and I left my notes downstairs, but I had a look at Ahab and I tried to do an analysis of him through the 5-factor model of personality. And the reason to say that is because of the things that I came up with are very, very similar to what you would see with OCPD. From memory, Ahab, he would be open to experience, but he's going to be pretty low. Okay. The openness is very rigid in a particular direction. It's the obsessive, which you would see with OCPD. High in conscientiousness. Again, this could be the trauma, but he's high in conscientiousness, but this is more pathologically directed. You know what I mean? So it's not that he just likes things tidy or he likes things done a certain way. No, this is the goal and this is what we're all doing. And along the way, of course, there's the doubloon and everything. So he's trying to keep people on board. I wouldn't say he's extroverted. He probably has enough extroversion to make him a good leader. He's not going to become a captain unless he has leadership skills and qualities. So he can probably be assertive, but not necessarily sociable, which again, sometimes you would see with OCPD. I would say he's low in agreeableness to the point where he's probably antagonistic. And the neuroticism, I think, is interesting. He's clearly dealing with a lot of traumas. And he probably believes that the best way to get rid of the trauma is to kill the whale. But he's definitely struggling with his demons.
Have you ever heard? Sorry, Paul. Have you ever heard, Darren, the reflection? I don't know if it's clinically accepted, but a lot of clinicians, they work with psychopaths and they say, oh, this person has no value system, therefore no conscientiousness. And one reflection I heard was, no, they have a value system. Mm-hmm. It's just not your value system and it's not society's value system, but they have one and they stick to it. You know, omerta, gang culture, mafia rules. They absolutely have a value system. It's just not the common one. It's not the societally accepted one.
Yeah, it's in cluster B, the antisocial personality. It's not that you're right, they don't have values or anything, but they tend to kick against their outside of social norms and things like that.
But in this, I was going to say, just obvious gag, ultimately, I think we can all agree didn't have a leg to stand on. But more significantly, I do think there is something, I can't resist bad jokes, I'm sorry. I've just put myself off. There is something admirable. So the way you're discussing him clinically, it's the Garden of Eden mythology. It's the fall of Lucifer in Paradise Lost. Rebelliousness is the thing that makes human beings creative. Rebelliousness against fate is what's given us civilization. So I also think Melville is giving you the other side of it, that if everyone sat round all day like I do, we'd still be in the caves. You do need the Ahabs of this world. Without them, it would be interesting what life would be like.
Yeah, I think Ishmael says at one point. Go ahead, Richard.
I was just saying, I'd rather be stuck on a boat with Ahab than fucking Ishmael. Sorry, go on.
But Ishmael was a survivor.
He was, no, he was the one that survived. Because these people went to sea for like 3 years. When you try and like comprehend that from a modern day perspective, like just the nous who would need to do that. But Ishmael does say at one point, it's like essentially what a whaler does is go around the world for 3 years, if not more, putting themselves in danger every day. potentially losing a leg like Ahab, and then they end up back in the same place. You end up back in Nantucket or Newfoundland or whatever. And Ishmael does say, like, why didn't you just stay in Newfoundland? Why didn't you just stay in Nantucket? Why didn't you stay in Martha's Vineyard? Why didn't you just stay there? What is it that drives these people to go around? And it's like you said, Paul, it's that admirability for what they're doing. And I think at one point, I mean, obviously nowadays we see whales in a very different way. And I don't think there's many people, maybe apart from some Nordic countries or Japanese, that still hunt them. But at one point, Ishmael does say that what the whale is producing, what they get from the whale, the spermaceti and all the parts, it's like, this is powering the world. This product at the time was the engine of industrialization, so to speak. So someone had to go and get it, and you needed to have serious amount of braveness and a serious amount of bollocks, to put it crudely, to go and do this. So yeah, you could stay at home, but somebody was going to do it, and these people wanted to do it. They
do you know, I don't know the full details, so I apologize, but I just did a quick scan in the past about spermaceti and the idea that for the actual whale, so yes, they used it, it was absolutely pure and it gave off no smoke, and it was like a really beautiful pure light, which in a world without electricity is amazing. Yep. But for the actual whale, I believe it's found that people think it's in the head. I think it's at the front near the nose. But it allows dilation of the veins, I think, and it controls how the whale sinks and rises. But
it's
also,
one theory,
it's also, they think it could be the way it sloshes about. It's some weird echo system, like a bat, where they could they could find a route in the sea. So I just find that amazing, because you've got within a whale's head, you've got this sea within the sea.
Sea within a sea,
and
interesting.
That is, and the whole book is about the void and the abyss of the sea. So in that sense, the Leviathan, the whale, given that it's a sea within a sea, and that's the sea within the sea that they're seeking, is the valuable commodity.
Yeah, it's very Nolan-esque, isn't it?
I'll just say sea a few
your
more
friend
times.
Christopher Nolan, a sea within a sea within a sea. Maybe Nolan's next movie after the Odyssey is Spermaceti, the movie.
The Odyssey. See, you can't get away from it.
Stu, where in the north of England are you from?
I am originally from Gisborough, which is the top end of North Yorkshire, just next to the North Yorkshire Moors, near to Middlesbrough. But I lived on the Isle of Man for about 5 years as well, when I was about 16 to 22. So I picked up a little bit of Manx as well.
So you said Naus, and you said they needed Naus to go around the world, which means I know you're northern. Did you know it has the same etymological root as gnosis?
It does, yeah.
I think, Richard, isn't the word nous, it's actually N-O-U-S is an actual Greek word.
Yeah, I believe so.
It's one of their different types of wisdom, like Sophia.
Knowingness, yeah. Have you got that? Because when I found that out, I was like, oh, my grandmother always used to use that. Use your nous, lad.
Nous, lad, yeah.
Well, I can remember
about Yaldabaoth.
But I can remember my parents going, "You dirty Jezebel." So,
I've heard that.
So it was weird reading about Jezebel ever since I was a kid.
What had you done for them to call you a dirty
Exactly.
Jezebel?
No, well, I came back in fishnet stockings and lipstick, and I shouldn't have.
Paula. Alter ego.
I was ahead of my time. I was very curious.
You were never the same after that version of Moby Dick you watched. You know, the one where Julian Clary was playing Ahab.
Oh, God. Darren, you are the starbuck of
Dickie
this.
Mo.
Hey, Darren, you are the starbuck of this crew. If you go filthy and degenerate, there's no hope for the rest of the crew.
There was a thought I had before, and people who want to follow the psychological threads of this might find it interesting. We're talking about Ahab's openness, and you think, well, you know, wasn't a racist. He'd take anybody on if you were on his crew. You're one of his men. There was no racial division there.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking about the OCPD and the psychopathy. And what can we conclude from that? Well, he must be an open-hearted, progressive man. And then I was like, yeah, Al Capone used to hire everybody as well. He had no sense of like ethnic division as long as you did his bidding. So he was open. As Darren said before, you can be open and conscientious, but not necessarily be the greatest person.
In the right way.
In the right way, exactly.
Isn't this the whole thing about Manifest Destiny? I mentioned the Mexican War of 1848. It's that they're ploughing through, making it a bi-coastal country. And it's this. It was slaves excluded. It was a melting pot right from the beginning. But it's your point, Richard. It was a melting pot as long as you subscribed to making sure manifest destiny was realized.
Yes.
So there's that whole Ahab exists within that context. Judge Holden exists within that manifest destiny.
Yes. Okay. Because that's the ultimate value system of warriors. That's the ultimate military value system. We put up with everything and anything as long as we're all on the same mission. What does Judge Holden say? All games are games of war, and the only game worth playing is war itself. So it's got that same mirror image of the ethics of power and conquest and I'm going to say it again, colonialism, just because I like saying it. You know, the drive to colonize, the drive to be a conquistador. There is an ethic. It's just not a very nice one, especially if you're on the wrong end of the pointy stick.
But that's what I was saying earlier about it's easier to fight the external demons than the internal ones.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but again, why I like the novel is none of this niceness bollocks. It's how life actually is. And that's Blood Meridian. Blood Meridian takes it too far in this. I'm not criticizing it, but you don't have to be like Judge Holden.
Yeah.
I'd suggest.
I knew there was a heart in there somewhere, Paul.
Well,
Paul
for
gives life
example,
coaching. You don't have to be a sadistic, murderous psychopath. Not all the way. Not all the time.
no, but it's Stuart's
Just a
point
little bit.
about it's Stuart's point about the spermaceti. It's the idea that the whaling ships were actually keeping civilization in power,
Someone has to die for.
whereas
for the
Judge
other
Holden is
to grow.
collecting scalps, which is hardly comparable. So I do think that there is that difference. I would suggest that Judge Holden. It's absolutely fascinating to compare the Judge and Ahab, for the very reason that you actually then, by comparison, realize Ahab's not so bad. And it
There's
gives
a
you
reason for it. And
Well,
with
also,
Judge Holden,
Richard-
there's no reason.
I'm really clutching at straws to make you enjoy the novel, but maybe having suffered through Moby Dick, when you go back and read Blood Meridian, it would give you a different perspective on the Judge.
Well, I tell you what I did do. I finished Moby Dick and then I watched James Franco's Proof of Concept. He shot 20 minutes of Blood Meridian because he used to own the rights for it. And it was the scene where the Judge saves the Glanton gang. He saves the murderous psychopaths. I don't know if you guys remember the scene. They go up a mountain and he finds elements by which, combined with urine, they can dry it out with guano and they make gunpowder. He does alchemy. He's a wizard, but a wizard of death, and the wizard who saves the killers so that they can continue killing. And when I went, I just finished Moby Dick, and then I watched it maybe the following night. I was like, okay, I may have let Ishmael get to me too much, and I may not have seen, because I like all that. I like Doom. I like the fact that they're just traversing this huge sea. The sea is the bigger monster than the whale, and they're trapped in the clockwork inevitability of their own logic. And it's gonna, obviously everybody knows the ending of the story anyway, but even if you didn't, there was no way they were just going to find the whale, go home, split the money, and all be cool. There would be no point in writing the fucking book. And the way it's set up is there is a hideous, inevitable tragedy coming, and then it has that same atmosphere as No Country for Old Men. It's something awful has to happen here. I just don't know what it's going to be. Blood Meridian, the same. Something awful. Any road we take, doesn't matter what we try and do. We can go there. We can go here. We could not go to the island with the cannibals because that's bad. And then, the fucking worst thing happens. I love all that. I love Doom. I love gloomy, doomful books and stories. And maybe I should go through it again with a more open mind.
Well, can I just finish, because we're running out of time, but one of the images I wanted to ask you all about was the Great Armada, I think the chapter's called. And I think the subtitle or one of the descriptions is The Enchanted Calm. It's when they're killing a whale and they stumble upon this halcyon, idyllic pod where there's a calmness in the sea, and all these whales are frolicking and they're getting jiggy with each other, and one mother whale is feeding a calf, and it's absolute Garden of Eden in a maritime way. And Ishmael uses it as an excuse to describe his inner calm. But then this is the blood meridian element of it. It's Melville's cruelty in that idyllic calm, which I think is a metaphor for, in the midst of chaos, managing to keep your own individuality, which he struggles to do throughout the whole book. But one of the whales has one of these horrible sharp spades, and it's thrashing about in pain, so it starts to kill all the other whales. So you've got this absolute idyllic scene of whale heaven, and in it is introduced one of the whales killing their own kind because of man's intervention. So it's like the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Yeah. And it's both stunning the way it's described about this peaceful, you come across in all this turmoil, there's this, the sea is suddenly tranquil because all these whales have created this artificial lake. But you can't even enjoy that because then death is just round the corner, which again is a metaphor for life, as I have to start reducing my consumption of Nigerian Guinness.
I love it. I thanks for the recommendation, and people watching might like this because there's so little good entertainment around. Paul recommended a TV show to me. The main character is called Harry Holy, and it's Swedish, and it's a really good crime drama. There's another good Swedish movie that's full of doom I watched the other night, but it's very disturbing. It's called Aniara, if people are looking for stuff to watch. The Harry Hole series is great. Aniara is deeply disturbing. And the
Which channel is Aniara on, Richard?
I think I saw it on Netflix.
Right.
It's a hard Aniara, and it's based on a poem written by a Swedish guy in 1952. There's a sci-fi poem of a spaceship that goes off course and the inevitable fate of people who try to escape into fantasy whilst drifting in deep space. Bloody, like if anybody's got PTSD or is easily emotionally upset, do not watch Aniara. Critics hated it because it's not enjoyable. It's not an enjoyable film, but it's powerful.
Did you ever get to watch Mr. In Between, Richard?
Yeah. I've spoken to him. I messaged him. I watched it, and then I saw him on Instagram, and I thought I'll just ping him a DM, see what happens. He watches the narcissistic abuse stuff.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But yeah, Mr. In Between, that's another really good recommendation.
No, because the Critical Drinker, it took him ages to come across it, and when he recommended it, I think it's gone semi-viral.
Right. Awesome. So couldn't be happier for him. It's so well written, so well acted, such a fantastic piece of work. Couldn't be happier for him.
And
I'm
he
glad
hasn't
the Critical Drinker watched it.
And he hasn't blotted his copybook by making endless guff. I think that's one of the few things he's ever produced.
He's disciplined. So once that story was told, he's gone, there's my story. And it's a pretty gloomy story. It's funny, but it's gloomy. And once the story was told, and it never extended itself. The world he's created is entirely internally coherent. It's consistent. It's constrained. It's disciplined. And when the story was done, he stopped. Fucking great. Really good. Good on him, as the Aussies would say.
Dollar's mum in the comments is saying that you got her to read Blood Meridian and she was sorely disappointed. You Philistine, Dollar's mum. We're going to have to do a live in future because
no one's ever read Blood Meridian because I said so and enjoyed it. I'm not aware of one person who went, oh yeah, I see why you've read that 5 times, 10 times. I see why you're obsessed with it. Everybody who reads it just says this is garbage. I don't know what you're doing with your time.
You and I are going to have a Blood Meridian off where we have to argue and kick each other's heads in as to who likes it the most.
Yeah. And scalp each other.
Yeah, on camera.
And I think if I shaved, I could do a passable Judge Holden impression.
Oh yes.
I'm too pink though, aren't I? I think he was pure white.
He was also a white whale, yes. Pink.
Yeah, but I'm like a pink gammony whale. So maybe not a good match. I apologize. Right. Well, anyone want to add anything before I wrap it up?
I think that's it. Yeah, I think we've
I just like to add one thing, and I'm a sci-fi nerd, and I always thought this was interesting. In one of the Star Trek movies, one that had the villain Khan in it, he quotes Moby Dick throughout the movie. This guy is marooned on a planet for something like 15 years. So he's got 15 years to read Moby Dick. And many times he read it, I don't know, and he's memorized it. And he never learned a bloody thing.
I love Darren's upbeat conclusions.
So if anyone hasn't watched The Wrath of Khan, watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about.
No.
So is your conclusion, Darren, if you go to all the effort of reading Moby Dick, you still won't learn anything?
No, just Khan didn't.
Can't
He desperately wants revenge against Kirk and the Enterprise. He just keeps quoting Moby Dick because it's all about revenge. But he didn't learn a bloody thing.
Khan was a Klingon, wasn't he? From it's Star Trek 3, isn't it? Wrath of Khan.
No, Khan was he was
What
like
was
a
that?
genetically enhanced human or something.
Stuart,
Like that.
do you know, Stuart, you've just triggered me, because when I go to purgatory for like 10,000 years at least, it's going to be you and Darren discussing Star Trek in a lift, and I'm with you.
He was a Klingon. No, he wasn't. He was a genetically enhanced human.
He was a Dalek. That's not Star Trek.
Kirk's better than Picard. No, he isn't.
Yeah, no, I'm a Picard man. I'm a TNG guy, so maybe we can argue that at some point.
Yeah, unbelievable. We've been that's what we end on, Star Trek. Shame on you, Darren. Shame on you.
But it's a good example of how Moby Dick is in the culture, and even something like 200-300 years in the future, they're still reading it. I think that's a good.
So is the SS US? What was it called? The SS Enterprise?
No,
USS Enterprise.
USS Enterprise. Was that a big white phallus going through space?
It was called the USS Colonizer.
You can probably.
No, that was Flesh Gordon.
You can probably see a little model of it over my shoulder in my cabinet.
Yeah, I can see it.
Right, so I'll rephrase the question, Darren. Do you have a phallic symbol behind your shoulder?
No, just a small penis.
Just a small penis.
Anyway, Richard, are we gonna? I've been reminiscing about the Mobile Dick company. Do you want to revisit it and maybe restart it?
Mate, I mean, a dollar's a dollar. Man's got to eat. You know what I'm saying?
No, because I'd fill a niche, wouldn't I? I'd be like a burr, a senile burr in the gay community.
Talking about impulse control, I went a bit jolly heretic before. You said the men were chasing a sperm whale, and most of the men were drowned, and I wanted to shout, "In sperm!"
And
I was like, this isn't the jolly heretic. Keep your fucking mouth shut and keep a straight face.
Okay.
Right. So on that uplifting note, we will detumescently say goodbye.
Thanks for joining us on this week's edition of 100 Great Sea Shanties. Until next time. Hornpipe fever.